that's kind of what I want to talk about today, really, is how you get more leads from your website. Specifically, how do you generate more leads? How do you get more sales, conversions, whatever it is you track, whatever it is you're looking to convert online. And that's what I'd like to talk about for 25 minutes now. So let's just start with a very, very quick definition of what a conversion is. So assuming that everyone in this room has a website, assuming in this room everybody kind of has responsibility to drive either traffic or conversions from that website. Yeah? The conversion rate of a website is basically the number of conversions you get within a given time period, so let's say a month. So that could be contact form completions, that could be clicking on an email, it could be purchasing of a product, for example, divided by the number of visitors you get in the same time period. So for example, if it's 10 conversions in a month and you've had 1,000 traffic, you've got a 0.1% or 1% conversion rate, depending on what you're depending on what metric you're using there. And obviously, the higher your conversion rate, in theory, the more conversions you get, the more revenue you will make. Make sense? Okay. There was an e-consultancy report earlier this year which actually says that the benefits of what we call conversion rate optimization is very, very important to most marketers and most business owners. It's so important that, in fact, that 72% of website owners said they were unsatisfied or not satisfied with the amount of conversions that their website was generating. Further beyond that, 59% said that having some process in place to optimize the amount of conversions you get from your website was crucial to their marketing efforts. 98% of them said that improving the conversion rate would have obviously a significant impact on their objectives and their outcomes for that particular year. So that's what I'd like to talk about today for the next 25 minutes, is how to improve the conversion rate of your website. Let's take a little step to the side for a second and say there is another method, another way of thinking about getting more revenue in from the business, and that is to perhaps optimize each of your channels individually, which makes sense. So taking paid search, for example, the adverts at the top of Google, you could say, let's optimize our paid search campaign and let's get that working a little bit better for us. And if you look at kind of this table here, we're looking at the original baseline, which is at the top. We've got a consistent paid search impressions, the number of people that are seeing your ads. And then what we're looking at here is the click-through rate from the original campaign of 2%. Now what we can do here is we can maybe optimize the paid search campaign a little bit and get a slight uplift, which gives us slightly more visitors on the same conversion rate, gives us slightly more conversions, and gives us pretty much the same cost per conversion, the same ad spend. What we could do, though, is look at optimizing the website to get more conversions. So how does that look? Well, we get the 2% conversion rate, we get 2,000 visits, we get a slight uplift of 2.2% on the website itself, which gives us the same 44 conversions. But actually, it gives it to us at a slightly lower cost per conversion. So that's another way of thinking about whether you'd want to optimize the website ahead of perhaps your channels. Obviously, the best way to do it really is to look at both at the same time. To have a really, really good PPC or campaign that's been optimized as well as it possibly can be, and then continue to optimize your website to get an even further uplift. And what it basically gives you is more conversions for a lower cost. Does that kind of make sense? Is that kind of relatively logical thinking? Okay. Let's take a few steps back. Let's go back in time perhaps to Steve, shall we call him. Steve is a consumer. He's in the 1980s. He's looking to buy a pair of Nike shoes. So he's walking down the street one day and he sees a billboard for a nice pair of Nike shoes that are being advertised. And he thinks, okay, thanks very much, Nike, for spending a lot of money on the billboard advertising. When I'm ready to buy shoes, I'll probably pop into the Nike shop. And maybe he does, maybe he buys a pair of Nike shoes and maybe he doesn't. Let's skip forward 20 years to say the last 5 to 10 years. Steve might be walking down the street and see the same billboards, but what's he likely to do now? He's more than likely going to go home and think, when I'm ready, I'm probably going to Google Nike shoes. I'm probably going to hit the Nike store first. I might have a little browse around the Nike store. I might buy there and then, but maybe it's the full retail price, and actually I'm gonna browse a little bit further afield, and I'm gonna look at some other competitor sites, and I'm gonna maybe Google cheap Nike shoes, maybe Nike Shoe Shop Liverpool, and maybe click on one of the ads at the top, and maybe I'll browse around a few websites, and maybe he'll make a purchase decision then based on what he sees on those websites. Maybe it's based on cost, But maybe it's based on value, the value of buying that product on that website for the price that they've stated. But what Steve really wants when he hits a website, what his objectives are, he wants to know that the website he lands on is relevant to the search that he's made on Google. He wants to know that if he types in cheap Nike shoe shop Liverpool, he lands on a website that talks about having really, really good value shoes made by Nike, and it's a shop based in Liverpool. So he's looking for relevance. He's also looking for clarity. He's looking for a very clear, what we call proposition, a promise to the customer, a reason to buy, the why, as Caroline said before. He wants to know that this shop is reliable, it's credible, and that they have my best interests at heart. What he doesn't want any distraction. He doesn't want ads. He doesn't want flashing offers going past him 100 times. He doesn't want any anxiety. He doesn't want any buyer's remorse. He wants to know that other people are buying the same products and getting the same value from the products. So maybe it's around social proof or about credibility or reviews. Maybe it's about the quality of the shot. Maybe it's about the information provided. Maybe it is just about price for Steve. But either way, he wants to be very, very clear that he's in the right place to buy, and he wants to have as few distractions as possible. He wants to feel happy with the purchase he's about to make. Does that make sense? So let's go to what we call conversion rate optimization or conversion optimization, and the method of testing which particular part of a website page, or perhaps which page, works better to help Steve make his decision. So in essence, really, really simplistically, A/B testing is presenting roughly 50% of the customers that land on your website with one variation of the page, and the other 50% with a new variation. So the original is called the control, and this one here is the variation it's called the variation. And what we're doing is looking to test which elements improve the conversion rate. As simple as that. Now you might think big changes might work, but actually generally speaking the smaller micro changes is what Steve is actually affected by. That's what impacts his decision. Generally speaking, he's happy that it's a Nike shoe, and it's happy it's the product that he wants. It's the little things that are on a website that help Steve make the difference in his purchasing decision. So our conversion rate optimization process follows these 6 steps. I'll take you through each of these steps in turn. So the first thing to do is to explore, understand what the current website is doing. Then we create a hypothesis of what we think we might want to test. Then we run the test. We review the results, and perhaps we implement the changes. Final thing to do is we refine what the next test will be, because it's a cycle, it's a process that has to keep going. A single CRO test is less effective than an ongoing campaign. I'll explain why in a bit more detail. So to identify what the opportunities are, use tools such as Google Analytics, which if you haven't got on your website, I'd strongly recommend you get that added to your website now. That gives you a bit more basic statistical information about which pages perhaps aren't converting as well, which page on your site perhaps have a high bounce rate or low time on page. That starts to give you a bit of an indication about what you may want to test. Then you've got really, really interesting tools like Hotjar, which do heat mapping, and they do page-by-page analysis of where people are actually clicking, where they're actually looking for information. And the darker spots here, or the more redder spots, give us an indication to what people are actually trying to find. So this may be, for example, the offer, or this may be the phone number, or this may be a code. It gives us an idea about what we may want to test to refine to see if we can then improve the conversion rate of that page or of the overall website. So we start with explore. Then we look at some hypotheses. We look at some things we want to test in a more granular way. And these can be very, very small things. And generally they are we want to start with small micro changes. So it may be the headline. You might simply just tweak the headline just from a slight grammatical change or a slight stylistic change, but keeping the rest of the page the same. Split testing again, 50% and 50%. It might be the call to action itself, so your proposition or your strapline or your call to action, and again, just writing it in a slightly different way. So here you've got, on the left-hand side, return to cart, and here you've got continue shopping. And we can test to see if that has an impact, positive or negative. It could be simply things like visuals, so even things like the colour image on the left may work better or worse than a black and white image on the right. Buyer psychology and consumer psychology is a mystical art, and it's not a perfect art. We have to test and we have to refine for your product, for your service. It's not always going to get a positive result, but that's okay. It could be offers, and even simply shifting the way you think about your offer, even though you're actually offering the same thing in terms of the value, it could just be a pound or euro, should I say, off, or it could be a percentage discount. Some people may be more heavily influenced by different types of offer. And again, there's no right or wrong here. It's about what's the quantitative significance of choosing one of the differences. What are we testing to make sure that overall more people are likely to convert one or the other? And lots of people work on contact forms. And, for example, how many fields are in the contact form, or how many fields are required fields on the contact form. Contact forms are a big part of the conversion, especially with Caroline. Your checkout pages, they're a big part of the conversion process, and optimizing fields and the checkout process is probably the first place you'd want to start. Then you run your test, and there's two great tools I want to talk to you about very briefly. The first one is a free tool, which is Google. It's called optimized.google, Google Optimize. And you can run relatively simple CRO, A/B, ABN tests using this platform. And you can launch two different variations of the same page without a lot of complicated technical knowledge in the background. It's relatively straightforward to do. It's pretty limited. You can only track sort of up to 3 types of conversions at one time. And there's far more limitations beyond a more advanced platform. So if you're going to get into a little bit more detail and really start to explore CRO in your own company, I'd look at something like Optimizely as a more advanced tool. It's definitely more expensive. It sort of starts at £200 plus. They don't give you the price on their website, if that gives you an indication. You have to call up and get a certain package chosen for you. I think it goes up quite steeply beyond that the more tests and more trials you do. Let's look at a couple of quick case studies. So EA Technology, who launched SimCity a couple of years ago, SimCity 5, they wanted to test whether having a promotional banner in the top saying pre-order now with the value proposition on there would increase or decrease compared to not having the promotional banner at the top. Any thoughts on which one won? The left. Anyone think the right? Not many takers for the right. That's the original. 5.8 conversion rate on that. The variation got 10.2. So they got a 56% uplift in sales and revenue from removing the promotional banner. And lots of these things are counterintuitive. And lots of these things are against perhaps even some of the assumptions we had right at the very start. But that's the process of testing. That's the process of CRO, is to understand what your consumers want for your product or service, and remove some of the more generalized assumptions we have every day and we have to make in marketing, which are a bit more qualitative. This is a company called Groove, and they wanted to experiment with their proposition and with different types of way of sort of communicating that proposition. So they had the original, which is a pretty standard, header, hero image, call to action. And they tested this variation, which is a slightly different one that's focused around the video and there's a few more features and benefits on the right-hand side. Who thinks the left one will win? Who thinks the right one will win? 2.3% conversion rate for the original, 4.3% conversion rates. It's almost double. 53.5% uplift in new inquiries for Groove during their trial period. That's a significant increase. Server density. These guys basically offer servers. So they had two different things they wanted to test. The original, which they thought was working very well, and they'd done it for a long time, was having what they call configurable pricing. You could kind of work out what type of server, what type of support you needed, and you could build your own package. The test was, what if we offered more structured pricing in packages? Which one do you think won? Anyone think left? Everyone right? The original, 6.9.2 conversion rate, had 20 conversions during the trial period. The variation had 5.19 conversion rate and 15 conversions. So is that a success or is it a failure? Well, let's dig a bit deeper. The original average order value was £19 or $19.70. With the uplift, with the variation, the uplift, the average order value went up to $55.53. So for less conversions, they actually made more revenue. And that's, again, another way of thinking about CRO as a process. It's not always about getting more conversions. Ultimately, most of us, I'm assuming in this room, are in this game to generate revenue for our businesses. So it's not just about simple conversion uplift. It's about revenue uplift as well. And that's quite a clever way of thinking about how to get more revenue from just trialing different things, different way of thinking about your customer and what they might need. This is a CRO exercise that we did with Elephant Digital recently. We're working with Amwell Homes, who are a house builder in North Wales, and they're focused on their mobile experience and improving the number of mobile conversions, because they know that lots of people are travelling around the sites, and as they drive past, they might load the Amwell Homes website and they might make an inquiry, or they might just review the site details or the development details. So our mission was to see if we could improve the conversion rate on mobile. We simply trialed putting a Get in Touch button on the top right. This is the first of 6 trials we did for them. And it increased conversion rate by pretty much double. And for them, that actually means an additional 15 houses sold in 2018. That's a significant uplift from them. And we managed to do that because their marketing team understands all their conversion rates right the way down to the bottom line revenue that's generated. That's a significant uplift for them. So questions people normally ask me is, well, can my company benefit from CRO? And my answer is always, absolutely yes. Every company can benefit from conversion rate optimization and putting a process in place to refine and improve your website conversions. It generally works better if you've already got an established set of monthly traffic, 5,000 plus as a starting point. If you've got 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 plus, it works even better. The more data you can collect, the more impact CRO will generally have. So for the 2 ladies here, I definitely say it would recommend it be something to look at, especially if your website's purpose is to generate leads or to sell products. It works far, far, far better if you've got a specific action that you're looking to get an uplift in. And finally, the most important thing is, it is a bit of a change for lots of company owners and lots of marketers. Being data-driven is something that lots of companies are aspiring to be right now. And it's quite a hot topic in in the marketing world at the moment. But adopting that data-driven mentality can be difficult sometimes to sell internally, because it is about taking a bit more of a risk, and it is about perhaps moving away slightly from the more, shall we say, abstract, creative, gut-based marketing. There's a place for that creative side. There's a place for that creative part of the process, for a designer, for a development and marketing company to come in and use their best practice and use their insight to guide what they feel is the right way to move a website or a campaign forward. But ultimately, to get proper tangible benefits and to get this uplift, you have to embrace a far more statistical, data-driven way of looking at the campaign. And finally, just a point to remember really is that the CRO process, it is an iterative process. It needs to be an ongoing process of testing and refinement. Not every campaign that you test, not every trial you do will prove successful. Every campaign will be a success because you would have identified what to do, or perhaps even what not to do. And there's lots of examples of campaigns, ones that we've run actually in the last year, that have reduced negative results that actually give you a little bit more insight as to what to do next. I think Caroline touched on it before about understanding why people come to your attraction or to your website or to your company is just as important as getting more conversions from the people who are coming. Understanding why people don't come to you is still a very powerful lesson to learn. So that's conversion rate optimization. I hope that's been of an insight and of use to you guys. I'll happily take any questions if you've got any. At the back.
What time frame did you run those different variations over?
Great question. It depends on the traffic, and it depends on the amount of conversions that you generate. So with Amwell specifically, they get around about 10,000 visitors per month. So the number of conversions they've got mixed with the amount of traffic they've got means we can run a trial over 3 weeks and we can get what's called statistically significant data. And that's the key. So it might be a day if you've got 1 million visitors, and it might be 1, 2, 3 months if you've got slightly less visitors. Erin.
Obviously, like everyone's doing the same with data, then they're not ROI, things like the market accuracy.
Hmm.
Do you think it's not really a place when there's an engagement as like a success?
Absolutely, yes. So I know you guys are from University of Liverpool, and I must admit, you're thinking about this before. There is definitely a way, there's definitely a thought process to not focus too heavily on conversions. That's not necessarily what you guys would look for, but to focus on engagement. And definitely, yeah, if engagement is what you want to measure, if engagement is one of the metrics that you're going to report back as part of your marketing reporting, then absolutely CRO can help you do that. And then you would have to help me, for example, if we were running it together, define what engagement looked like to you. Was it more time on site? Was it more pages they visit? Was it a lower bounce rate, for example? And you can definitely test for that and refine and improve your website pages using this process.